people to join, and then we'll get started.
Okay.
Jade was nice and early. That was good to see.
I know it's like, oh, better check I've got the link and the right link. So yeah.
Just resent it as well.
So do you want to start, Emma, and we'll let people in as they come in?
Yeah, I was just going to give a couple more minutes, so I was thinking just to wait a few, because I think there's still quite a lot of people in there that we're waiting for.
Okay.
Get started at 3 minutes past.
It's a bit hot, isn't it?
Mm.
To be
Very warm.
coming along to a gender pay gap presentation. So congratulations, everybody who's made it.
Yes. Maybe you could put in the chat where are you all from Aberdeen? Are you all coming in? Where are you all coming in from? I'm personally from, I'm down in Exmouth. Couldn't be further away from Aberdeen. Leanne?
Nicer weather though, huh?
Yeah.
Even better than what we've got.
Yeah, I'm in Liverpool and it's absolutely glorious. Hot, bit too hot, but the sun's shining, so no complaints here.
Tom, where are you calling in
I
from?
am based in sunny Oxford, which is miles away from the beach, so we have very little wind at the moment, and it's sweltering out there, but looks beautiful.
Well, I don't want to make you all jealous, but I did go in the sea this morning.
Nice.
Oh,
And
Very
it's
good.
18 degrees in the sea.
Oh wow.
was
Oh,
it?
wow.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
Oh, wow,
Well,
that is
yesterday it was
nice.
20, apparently.
That's what everyone's experiencing in Aberdeen outside.
Yeah, I think it is. It's 18 degrees outside just now in Aberdeen.
Oh, really? Oh, well, that was the sea temperature this morning.
And we're in
Right.
shorts and t-shirts.
Wow. Okay, so let's get started. Thanks everybody for joining today. For those who don't know me, my name's Emma Bejat and I'm the Axis Chair. So for those who don't know the Axis Network, we're a gender equity charity focused on the energy sector. And each year, over the past 4 or 5 years, we have produced a gender pay gap report. This year, the report was done in conjunction with Lead 50/50. And just to kind of help us to review that data and see where our energy organisations are sitting, Lead 50/50 are doing this webinar with us to give an opportunity to talk through the report and then answer any questions that you may have. Just a little bit more on Axis. So as I said, that we're a gender equity charity focused on in the energy sector. And we try and promote best practices with regards to bringing gender equity and inclusion to your organization. And we do this through different ways. Some of you might already be a pledge account, but if you're not a pledge account and you'd like to know more about what we do in order to try and promote best practices, you can find a link to our website in the top corner of the slide. And you also could just Google Axis Network. But if you find us and follow us and reach out to myself, then we'll be able to talk you through about what we could do with an organization. But we don't just work with organizations, we also work with individuals. So we run a mentoring program, sometimes once a year, sometimes 2 times a year, depending on the size of our cohorts. And with this is just a free session. I say session, it lasts 6 months. And we pair you up with your own mentor. And with that, you obviously can have your mentoring session going out. That it is a award nominated program as well. And in addition to this, we also create our own content around role model pieces and case studies showcasing best practice. We know that you can't be what you can't see, so we really try and highlight things that perhaps aren't as available for everyone to see and to give inspiration to everyone. But we're not here to talk about just Axis today. Today, we really want to focus on the gender pay gap. So I'm going to hand over to the Lead 50 team, and they'll take you through the report. There will be some time at the end for any questions that you have. So I hope everyone gets engaged, asks your questions. I think we have a chat going on. So if you don't want to wait till the end, please pop your questions in the chat, and then we'll definitely come to them.
Thank you very much, Emma. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we start. If you could mute yourself, that would be helpful. stop any kind of noise coming in. And yes, if you would like to put your questions in the chat, and if we don't get to them at the very end, we will definitely follow up afterwards with email or carry on a conversation like that. So anyway, my name is Ella Tyler. I'm just going to briefly introduce you to the Lead 50/50 team who are here today. Lead 50/50 is a workplace equity consultancy, and we help organizations create more balanced, inclusive, and high-performing workplaces. We look at data, we help them analyze it and see where they can make changes to really move the dial on their gender pay gap. What we do is we combine data with employee experience as well. So we don't just look at the numbers, we go out and we interview employees within the company itself. Joining me today, I've got Leanne. She's Leanne Lineker. She's the CEO. She's a recognized workplace equity specialist. She's got over 20 years experience working in organizations, improving representation, inclusion, and of course, leadership development. Passionate about helping businesses create workplaces where everyone has the opportunity to thrive. And we've also got Tom Rosenberg. He's our data analyst, and he's going to be going through the numbers with you later on. He's carried out this detailed analysis for you and written the report, which I hope you've all seen. And he's an expert at turning data, complex data, into things that you and I can understand and really get a hold of in our minds, because it can be a little bit overwhelming sometimes. So without further ado, let's start walking through the information that we've got. And at the end of this, we will share some practical recommendations that you can take away with you at the end of this session and start implementing back at base. So first of all, I'd like to thank the Access Network for inviting us to come and present this work. We've been working with Access for a few years now. It goes back to when we delivered a roundtable discussion in Aberdeen a few years ago. I don't know if any of you here attended that. We went up with Jago, and that was a fantastic experience, and really welcoming and open to discussing the challenges and all the challenges that you face, particularly in the energy sector. I know that you've made some genuine progress over the years, but it is really an industry that faces some big challenges when it comes to gender representation. And that's why we love seeing companies or organizations like Access Network leading the charge on these things and just keeping it in the discussion, because when people stop talking about it, that's when really nothing's going to be achieved whatsoever. And just to be clear, you know, we're not here to name and shame people or really look at that side of it. We're here to understand the story behind the data, which is what Tom's going to explain to us, and recognizing where progress is being made and maybe seeing how have they done it and what can we do ourselves, you know, from learning from best practice. Exactly what Emma just said, which is you cannot be what you cannot see. And this is just an extension of that thinking. So here's just to start off, to kind of get our heads in the space of what is the gender pay gap. It's just a useful way to explain why sometimes the gender pay gap data discussions can be quite difficult and even can get quite emotional. You know, people can get quite funny about it. But it's important to know that we are not here talking about men and women being paid differently. We're talking about a measure of difference in the average earnings between men and women. And that's what we're here to look at today. That's why this iceberg analogy is quite useful, because we only see the tip of it when we look at that data we're looking at today, because there's loads of things going on under the surface that contributes to the data that we're looking at today. And in a minute, Leanne's going to go over a slide which takes us into more detail about why we've got all these other things supporting the data that we're looking at today. But that's why it can be sometimes controversial, because people are looking for a single cause as to why the gender pay gap is like this. But in fact, there's so many things that contribute to it. But don't be put off just because it's overwhelming and there's so much stuff there. I think it's best, you know, it's really encouraging to see that we're trying to make even the smallest effort by coming to a webinar, thinking about it, going back to your office and doing something, you know, that can have a huge impact, even though you might find it quite overwhelming. So here is the slide I was talking about, Leanne.
Yeah, thanks, Ella. So we've put together this really beautiful infographic that explains what the gender pay gap ecosystem really is. There's a lot of words on there, it's pretty busy, but it's really, really interesting when you drill down into the detail. You will get a recording of this if you want to have a look at it more closely, and we can share it. We can share the slides as well with Emma, and she'll share them with you. But I'll just spend a couple of minutes talking through it so that you can see what exactly we're talking about when we talk about the UK gender pay gap ecosystem. So Ella mentioned there that what we're actually measuring is then talking about is the gender pay gap. A lot of people immediately think that we're talking about equal pay, and it's not the same thing. So equal pay is about two people doing the same work and receiving the same pay. That's been enshrined in law since the 1970s. There are still issues, and it's widely recognised that there are still issues, but that's not what we're looking at today. We're looking at the gender pay gap, which looks at the average earnings of men and women across an organisation. If you look at the middle left-hand side, the organisational column, we've broken it down to look at the different elements that go into the gender pay gap ecosystem. And I suppose organisational factors are really what Axis and the Pledge Network are concerned with. And there's a whole set of factors there within the organisational element. We talk about things like recruitment pipelines, promotion opportunities, leadership representation, retention, and workplace culture. Within the energy sector, there's relatively good representation of women in support functions, for example, such as HR, finance, communication, administration, but there's significantly lower representation in technical, engineering, operational, and executive roles. So those roles, leadership roles at the top. And the challenge isn't usually equal pay within a grade. The challenge is quite often who occupies those higher paid grades in the first place. So if women are underrepresented in senior engineering, project management, operations in the C-suite, well, that's where you are going to see the pay gap emerging. And that's why the Axis network focuses heavily on things like talent pipeline, promotion processes, sponsorship, leadership development, and inclusive recruitment. If you look at the next column, in orange, the functional and societal column, there are elements that sit outside, so influences that sit outside the organisation. It can be all sorts of different things, from subject choices at schools. It's well documented that girls gravitate towards social sciences and humanities, and despite best efforts of the educational establishment, boys tend to go more heavily into engineering, technical work, into trades. And that is outside of an organisation's sphere of influence, but it is definitely something which makes up pay inequality and contributes to the UK gender pay gap. Then there are the what we call, and researchers to do with the UK gender pay gap ecosystem, the real gender pay gap. That's where it's certainly organisational policies and processes can have an impact, but they sit outside that kind of place that we can have direct impact. So we're talking about things about women not in paid work, unreported work. So often things that go on outside the traditional economic sphere. We're talking about the fact that women work fewer hours, and part-time work leads to zero pay increase over time. And these all contribute hugely towards the UK gender pay gap. So while we acknowledge that it is a pay issue, it's also a representation issue. It's influenced by recruitment, progression, culture, leadership, caring responsibilities, and societal factors. And that's why at Lead 50/50 and Access, we're definitely not about calling people out. There's a whole host of reasons that there's a gender pay gap within an organisation and within society. What we want to do is celebrate the people that are making progress and look at examples of how we can follow that and make progress within our own organisations as well.
So,
And we'll look at some of those examples later on at the end of the presentation.
Tom, over to you.
Ooh, hi, I'm Tom. That was a very nice introduction from you earlier, Ella. So thank you very much. I hope I do make it understandable and accessible for you all. With my background, I hopefully can manage that. Are you like to go to the next slide, please, Ella? Sorry. So we're just going to take a closer look at the gender pay gap within the energy sector, as Ella referred to. Am I able to go to the next slide?
No, I have to
So-
do it, Tom. I have the power.
Oh, okay, cool. So the big question that was kind of asked, the heading that I suppose we put at the beginning of the report this year is, are things still improving? Because there are improvements afoot, but are they still improving? So that's kind of what we're going to have a look at today.
Has that moved on for you, Tom?
Oh, yeah, it has. Just yeah, next one, please.
Oh, okay.
That's okay. Okay, so if you've looked at the reports in the past, previously, there was a use of a scatter graph, which kind of had these dots going up and down. And there was a slight feeling that it wasn't entirely clear. Kind of, you just had these dots, so you could sort of see roughly where companies related to each other, but it was very difficult to have an awareness of how it's actually changed over time. So we do have those scatter graphs available, but I kind of felt for understanding what's happening over the past few years, it was easier to have this sort of line graph, even though it does still look a little bit scrappy. I've tried to sort of create a variance of colours so that you can easily sort of track any one individual company. So only certain companies it was possible to put into the study, just due to being able to get historical data, whether they've actually submitted it to the government websites, where companies of over 250 are legally, but they're legally bound to submit their data, but there's no kind of, no one sort of tracks actually what data's entered. So as a bit of a caveat, we are totally reliant on the data that a company supplies. It's not sort of been monitored and checked, and someone hasn't gone in and said, oh, actually, we don't know if you've given that data across correctly. And it's actually quite complicated. If you read, it's a huge document. What you've got to do to submit the data is incredibly complicated. I've previously a maths teacher, and I was reading it and I was like, wow, this would test me. So if you've got someone in there who just sort of thinks, I think that's what I've got to do, and they just sort of, send it off, or they haven't actually bothered doing it correctly, we are totally, the data that we're presenting is data that they have given. So that's just a small caveat. So if you sort of look at something and think, oh, that doesn't seem right, it's what the company told us, so or told the government. So that's just a small sort of caveat to put that in place. We are also going to be looking in particular at the gender pay gap, the median gender pay gap. Now, I don't want to insult anyone's mathematical intelligence, so I'm just going to briefly just remind you what the difference is between the mean gender pay gap and the median gender pay gap. So what they do for the median gender pay gap is they'll get all of the salaries for all of the males in a company. They have to work out what the hourly salary is, and then they put them in order. And the median is literally the one in the middle. So if you've got 101 males in a company, you would go down to the 51st male, and that person's salary is the salary that you would submit as your median pay for males. Now, it's kind of quite an interesting thing, because what it means is it completely ignores any extreme salaries of the people in the C-suite. And it also ignores the very, very low salaries because it's literally just looking at that middle position. And it's the one that the government usually uses for analysing data. And it's the one that historically the Access report has always used. And it's understandable because it's the one that's the most widely used. But there's also the mean is available. And the mean is where you add all the salaries up and divide by how many people you have, which is the more familiar average that people kind of use in day-to-day life. But it's just sort of have that awareness that there is a difference, because those extreme really big pays would affect the mean, whereas they don't affect the median. And when they do the comparison for the gender pay gap, what they've done is they've taken the median male pay, hourly pay, and the median female hourly pay, and then they compare the two. And they always use the male salary as your kind of 100% benchmark. So when you get a positive result, that means it favors the male. And if you get a negative result, it favors the females in the company. So if you look at that particular graph, you'll see there's just one company down at the bottom, which is Equinor. And they're the only company since 2020 where the median pay gap actually favors females within the company. All the other companies are all male, they're all above that 0 mark. And you can sort of then see as a comparison between them where some companies are higher than others. But just a couple of sort of highlights of this particular graph. 7 out of the 11, and it is the energy companies, so these are operators who are pledge companies. So it doesn't include other companies outside of Axis. That's just pledge companies that have been in this study. 7 out of the 11 operators actually improved their gender pay gap. And that actually does include Equinor, who have actually gone up. Normally it's when they go down because it's going towards 0. But Equinor has actually, their graph goes up, but it's going towards the 0%, which is the ideal target that you would like to be at. There should be 0 difference between males and females. So 7 out of the 11 operators improved last year on their gender pay gap. And over the 5 years, or the last 5 years, I know this graph goes further back than 5 years, but over the last 5 years, 9 of the 11 companies have shown improvement. The biggest decrease, just to sort of highlight the biggest decrease, was actually CNR, which is the company along the top. So although they had the biggest decrease in the last year, they are actually still the highest gap. So still lots of work to do there. So you can see they're still sitting above 30% difference, which is kind of quite a big difference when you think it's the median. You would normally expect the median to be really quite close because it's literally that middle salary over the whole company. So the biggest rise in the last year as well, and apologies if I'm pronouncing it incorrectly, is Ithaca. Or I don't know if that's meant to be ATHACA, but that's the yellow one in the middle. They had a sudden rise of 12.5% just from last year. So I don't know the reasons behind that, but if anyone is in the industry, they might be able to say, oh, actually, yeah, something happened in that company, and that's why that jump has suddenly happened. I know there's been a few takeovers, etc., within the industry. And as I mentioned before, Equinor is the only operators that favour the female employees. Next slide, please, Ella. So this is just a kind of look at the again the operators in the company. It's just kind of looking at the averages and the highs and the lows. And what's encouraging is the overall average, which is that green line in the middle, that is slowly decreasing over the years. It's not a massive decrease. It's a very slow, steady decrease, but nonetheless, it has decreased since 2019. It has decreased by 13%, which is fantastic, but more work needs to be done. Next slide, please, Ella. Okay, so now we've got some of the contractors who are signed up as pledge contractors in the Axis group. Again, can look a little bit messy because of all the lines. You'll notice some of the lines don't go all the way across. That's because they haven't submitted data previously. Like I said before, only companies over 250 are obliged to submit data. So There might be some companies who are below 250 and they have chosen not to submit it because they don't have to, which is kind of fair enough. But a lot of companies do still choose to submit. So if you are a company and you're thinking, oh, maybe we should get our data out there and it can be sort of analysed, then it would be a good idea to submit the data. While the deadline was back in April, you can still submit it throughout the year. And so a lot of the time, the data is taken at a specific point in the year, and we can only analyse what data was in at that point. So again, it's a bit more erratic amongst the contractors. As you can see, it's kind of there's a lot going on. It's a very busy graph. I might have preferred to have split it into two separate groups, but then it's kind of difficult to sort of choose why you choosing one group over another. And again, we can just see that there's one sole group down at the bottom favouring the females, which I believe is ASCO. So they're the only company of the contractors who are a pledge company where the gender pay gap favours females. So a couple of other highlights from this. Only 7 out of the 14 pledge contractors have actually improved over the last 5 years, which might seem you kind of feel that could improve. So that might be something that they want to look at and think about, sort of getting on the bandwagon with those half that have made improvements. The biggest increase was, and again, I've had to call them Stork / is it Altrad? Altrad, I think it is. Yeah, Stork and Altrad, because I think there was a bit of a takeover there. So I'm not familiar with the energy companies sort of specifically. I just looking at the data in the background. They actually had an increase. So they went up in the last year by 12.9%, which is quite a jump. And the best improvements in these companies was Schlumberger, which went down by 12.5%, and Expo, which went down by 8.4%. So kind of encouraging signs for them. And if they can keep that trend going, that would be fantastic. In fact, if you look at Schlumberger, it's that dark red one, which sort of nearish the bottom. They have kind of said it had a little rise. So that was over 5 years, that improvement, because they had a little rise this year, but over 5 years they've shown that improvement of 12.5%. Over 5 years, the average has only varied between 27.8% and 25% in favour of males, and that's a really small change. So for the operators, it was a 13% improvement over 5 years, whereas this has just varied by less than 3%. So really, really very little improvement. And in the best case, if you look at that median salary, it means that the male is earning £1.33 for every £1 that a female is earning in that median position. So that's quite a disparity that you can see there. Next slide, please, Ella. So this is something that hadn't been looked at previously in the report, and it didn't actually go into the report this year, although it could be added if we're still able to submit it at a later time. But it was something that Emma had sort of said, it'd be quite interesting to see how Axis are doing and also how the energy company is doing, sort of compared to the UK in general. And for this analysis, I've decided to also sort of include the mean gender pay gap percentage difference. So these are the averages. So the green line is the UK. So that means all companies in the UK who have submitted data. So since 2020, and it's worth noting that in 2020, only about 60% of companies submitted because of the COVID breakout. The government kind of turned around and said, oh, you might struggle to do this because you might not be in. And loads of companies decided to go, yeah, not going to bother. So there was fewer companies submitting then. So does that have a variation? It might do, because maybe only 60% of companies made a submission. So you're only getting part of the data, but it's still included in there. So you can see that the UK overall is lower and has slowly been improving, but it is still above 10%. So that is further work that needs doing. The energy sector overall, and when you include energy companies, that will include the contractors, it will include the operators, it will include companies who are just, say, doing if it's just like a sort of an administrative branch of, say, Shell, just as an example, that would be included in there because they work within the energy sector. So it kind of it's a big conglomerate of people that are included in that. But you can see that the energy sector isn't doing as well as the UK in general. And at the moment, the Axis Group is also slightly above that. So Axis is in purple, trying to go with the colour of their logo, orange for the energy sector and green for the all companies in the UK. So fantastic improvement last year from 24 to 26 of the last 2 years. For the Axis Group, kind of slightly better improvement than the energy sector overall, but it is still higher. So still a bit of improvement to be made there. And if you look at the mean, the Axis are actually fantastic. Theirs is the most steady decline going towards that ideal 0%. And the energy sector is also very kind of closely hugging the UK, but still just slightly above it. So work to be done as mentioned previously. Next slide, please, Ella. Now, this won't be completely clear after Ella said that lovely words about me making things clear. This one probably does need a little bit of explaining, so I'll hold my hand up to that. But it was kind of trying to encompass quite a lot of data sort of into one little graphic, and this was sort of the best I could come up with at the time, and it's still clear once it's explained. So just to have an understanding of what quartiles are, I mean, I don't have to tell anyone what a quarter is, but pay quartiles is the companies, as well as putting all of their pays in order, they then have to split the company into quarters. So you'll have the top quarter, the upper middle quarter, the lower middle quarter, and the lower quarter. So that goes by actual pay. So the top quarter, it's not like, oh, you just saw, you choose a number. That is literally 25% of the company will be in the lower quarter, 25% in the other four, making up the 100% for the whole company. The M and the F, I hope, are self-explanatory, male and female. And it's just showing the split. So the grey, it's only just slightly grey, row in the middle, which says average. That's the average split for the pledge contractors that were in the study, and the bottom one is for the pledge operators that were in the study. Okay, and you can kind of see, and I've got a really nice graphic coming up that kind of shows it a bit more nicely, so I did want to incorporate that as well. Don't know if that was great English. My maths has been English more nicely. So the average, you can see in the lower quartile, males 36% and females 64%. And then you go to the top quartile, and of the top quartile, 87% of the top quartile are male, and only 13% are female. So while you might have a company saying, "Oh yeah, no, we're doing a good job because we are employing more females, so we're trying to get that kind of that down to 50-50, which is what Leave 50-50 stands for. 50% male, 50% female. But it's not great if you're then putting them all of them in the lower quartile. The distribution you have overall as a company should be reflected in the 4 quarters. That's actually the best case scenario. So if you do have 30% females and 70% males, it would make sense that actually you would have that 70%, 30% split across the 4 quarters, because that would then be fair and you've got the spread going on. So even though you might still be thinking, oh, there's need for more females in the company, as long as you've actually got the spread correct, that's actually the best case scenario. And then in each quarter, it was only I've put the sort of the lowest and the highest for sort of the female percentage in those quarters. And so you can see that in the upper quarters, we did get one up in the upper middle quarter of the operators, where there was 33% females. So that's 1/3 of that upper quartile. But that was only one company. And there are some peaks in the 20s, but on average, you've got for the top quartile 13 and 16. And the upper middle, you've got 16 and 19, respectively, between contractors and operators. So again, lots of sort of work to be done there, and a couple of headlines maybe from this. So companies with 20% plus in the top quarter. So amongst the contractors, there was Equinor and Spirit Energy, and amongst the operators. Oh, sorry, that was operators. My apologies. And amongst the contractors, Schlumberger, Acer or Aker Solutions, and ASCO or ASCO also have got that representation in the top quarter. But the most consistent across the quarters were Subsea 7. So they were consistently most similar to their overall average distribution of males and females across the 4 quarters. And CNR were also very close to their overall, but CNR do have a very, very low percentage overall. So while their representation is good across the quarters, it's still a low representation overall. Next slide, please. So this is quite a nice graphic, which kind of shows the UK energy sector is on the top and the Axis pledge companies are along the bottom. So the lowest paid quartile, you can see quite a difference there. So the Axis pledge companies are kind of averaging. So this is a combination of both the contractors and the energy and the operators. So they're kind of mixed together now for this analysis. So yeah, lower quartile, you can see very heavily towards females. And then we start to see that disparity really highlighted in the lower middle quartile. And then as we carry on up the quartiles, we can just sort of see that the female representation does keep decreasing. Then we've got the top quartile. And then the last one actually shows like an overall split. And this is where the Access Pledge companies can give themselves a bit of a pat on the back, because overall, as an average, they actually do have more females within the companies. But if you look at the spread on the lower pay quartile, that's a big disparity, and that is contributing towards that gender pay gap in there. Next slide, please, Ella. And then this is something that's not been looked at before, and I kind of only touched on this. This is again, Emma also mentioned this as a request to sort of have a bit of a look at the bonus data within the energy sector. And what I've done is I've kind of just taken the data that has been submitted by the companies. So I've got Energy M and Energy F, which is all energy companies for male and all energy companies for female. So that's the blue and the kind of light sort of terracotta. And then I've got the Axis companies, male is purple and Axis female is orange. And you can see that apart from in 2024, where Axis males and females, it was the same percentage receiving bonuses, there is always a slight favour in the percentage of males receiving bonuses. Now, if you also bear in mind that there's a higher percentage of males in the company and a higher percentage of those males are getting bonuses, that kind of increases that disparity. And I can't remember if bonuses are always included in the overall pay split. I don't think it is, but don't quote me on that, please. So that means that that pay disparity is just on pay, and then the bonus is kind of a separate disparity. This data doesn't also include, again, a caveat. It doesn't include the size of the bonuses. So it could be that someone received a bonus of 5 million, and I'm sure you'll all be aware in the energy sector, there are definitely people receiving bonuses like that. And someone else might have just got a bonus of £10. It doesn't sort of give that disparity in there. That data is available, but it gets really convoluted and messy, but it is all available as public viewing on the government data website. I think that's it from me.
Wow, that's a lot. Thank you, Tom.
Sorry,
I think I did forget to say at the beginning that how long were you a maths teacher for? Did you do GCSE and A-level maths?
So I was teaching maths for 15 years, and now I am also still a private maths tutor. So yeah, so very heavily, I love maths, I love numbers, I love figures, and it's a little bit criminal how there's such a lack of understanding, even by very top people in a lot of companies. And we noticed last year, I worked out a simple way to improve the way they display the data within the government, but they weren't. Yeah. We passed it on to them, and they weren't interested. So no. There's a lot of beautiful things that can be done with maths, but it's only if people are prepared to listen.
No, but I think that's why I love it when you do present it, because you clearly, you've been trying to teach teenagers maths, so you have to make it as simple as possible, don't you? And that's why I definitely always understand it more when you start speaking. So thank you very much, Tom. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
So Leanne, you're going to talk a little bit about what can people do to improve?
Yeah, that's right. So we talk a lot about you at Lead 50/50 and Access, and that's why I think there's a lot of synergies between what we do. We love to understand the data and look at what's going on, and then what can we do to actually shift the dial, because that's what it's all about ultimately. And if you move to the next slide, Ella, I think one of the obvious ones and where companies and organizations can have a really significant impact is to look at pay and benefits. I mean, we're talking about the gender pay gap, so it makes sense, doesn't it, that we start off with pay and benefits, because it's really easy for companies to review and improve these areas because largely it's in their control. The first recommendation we would make as Lead 50/50 is to ensure consistency across parental leave policies. I mean, we have a whole host of different things that we look at right across the board. We've got 5 pillars of our equity index, and one of the most important ones is the pay and benefits. And underneath each of the pillars, there's a list of recommendations that we make to companies, and we've got policies that support those recommendations. But yeah, same pay conditions for maternity leave, paternity leave, shared parental leave is really, really important because it can unintentionally reinforce traditional caring roles otherwise and influence who takes time out of the workforce. We have ways that you can monitor who applies for shared parental leave, whether it's significantly more women in the workforce than men. And we have policies and processes that support HR directors to encourage men to lean into taking parental leave as well. So there's a lot you can do, as well as having the same pay conditions. You can really advocate and influence whether men actually even request it in the first place. If organisations genuinely want to support equal opportunities, then parental leave policies really do need to make sure that men and women take on caring roles. You can also look at pay equity analysis, which is a very strong recommendation that we make, so that it's different from gender pay gap reporting. We encourage companies to look at pay equity analysis. So whether people are doing comparable work and being rewarded fairly. There was a case, I think it was quite high profile, a lot of people might have heard about it, in Asda, the supermarket, where women were largely in-store work and men were doing work in the warehouses, regarded as quite equal work. However, men were getting paid quite significantly higher hourly rates than women, regardless of the entry requirements, the level of education you needed to get into those roles. And now Asda are being sued for, it's something like 1.2 billion, because there were those pay discrepancies. So annual pay equity analysis is really, really important. It allows organisations to identify anomalies before they become problems, and it gives leadership confidence that pay-based decisions are really evidence-based. And we also recommend that companies have really transparent processes where employees can request a review of their pay. Transparency, we feel, builds trust, and employees don't necessarily expect everyone to be paid the same. We're all adults. We understand that people get paid differently, but they do expect decisions to be fair and consistent. So we recommend using pay bands and no negotiations. If you're paid at a certain level, that's what you're paid. It's not down to who's got stronger negotiating techniques behind closed doors. And for energy businesses where you're competing for talent, engineering, technical leadership talent, fair and transparent pay. It's not just an inclusion issue, an equity issue. It's really about attracting the right talent, because it can be a really good way of attracting and retaining talent if people know that you are a transparent organisation.
Yeah, I mean,
Thanks,
it can be
Ella.
really, a huge benefit to know that a company is completely transparent. It instills trust and loyalty.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about having gender balance as a strategic goal. Businesses are absolutely excellent at doing what they're going to say, what they say they're going to do, especially if it's written down and it's monitored closely. But so if gender balance is not a strategic goal, it often gets forgotten or pushed aside, or whenever any budget gets cut, that's one of the first things that goes. So it's really important that it is something that the C-suite look at every single time they meet for their board meetings, and judge their performance against it, have it as KPIs. The organizations who make the most progress in this do tend to treat it as a strategic business objective. And it's not just an HR initiative. That's the difference. It needs to come out of HR, but be supported by HR. But really, those people in the C-suite need to get behind it. Set the targets, assign accountability, and measure progress. So the strategic plan really should have 50-50 at all levels, measuring it, looking at the barriers and taking practical action to address those barriers if it's not moving the dial. And also, I think Leanne did hint at this earlier on. We recommend measuring flexible working and job share requests, because many organizations do actually offer that now, and it's they advertise it. But the truth is that many people don't actually track who requests it. And once you've got that data, once you can see who's requesting it, which genders are requesting it, how long they're actually taking, then you can really make changes and address the issue. Are requests being approved consistently? Are senior roles genuinely flexible? Are job share opportunities being explored for leadership positions? What gets measured gets managed. And if you track these, you're far better placed to improve representation and retain the talent over the long term. There's been studies done where it's shown that, oh yes, we offer flexible working to men and women, but only 20% of men actually ask for it. And those that do ask for it, their managers haven't been trained to react in a way that supports them, because it's just so alien that a man should want to have flexible working or do part-time. So there's lots more obstacles for men than women to take this flexible working. And it's just not, if it's not in the culture and it isn't being modeled, then it's much more difficult for men to, to feel comfortable about taking it. Leanne.
Thank you. Yeah, I think a lot of time people have the right policies and processes in place, but as you say, they're not measuring it. And they're not thinking, how can we actively encourage more men to work part-time when their children are born, that kind of thing, or parents need a little bit of looking after in later life. And another one element where companies can have a big impact is on recruitment. It's one of the biggest levers organisations have to actually influence future gender pay gap outcomes. If you'd like to flick to the next slide, please, Ella. The energy sector is much like many other sectors. Organisations recruit from talent pools that are already male dominated, particularly if you're recruiting around engineering, operational and technical roles. And that's why it's really important to challenge assumptions before recruitment starts. So we really encourage you to look early on in the process and challenge those assumptions. Do we really need all of the criteria that's listed? Can we look at the language? Are we advertising in the right places? Are we leaving the advert up for long enough to encourage a diverse pool of people to apply? Are we attracting the widest possible pool of talent? Are you looking at who's applying for the jobs and thinking about why you're not getting a diverse pool in the first place? So it starts really, really early on in the process. One of the things that some people find curious as well is that we would recommend that you completely stop all employee referral schemes. they can be effective ways of recruiting, but people naturally refer people who are very similar to themselves. So if you've got a team of engineers who are widely male from a certain area, certain background, and you're trying to diversify your team, asking for people to refer, they're going to refer people they went to school with, people they went to university with, people that they play golf with, and you're going to get very little diversity in the group using an employee referral scheme. It's something that's really, really simple to do and really effective. And we also really recommend that you create career returner programs. A lot of the time, women drop out of the workforce because they have caring responsibilities and they find it difficult to return. And you are losing a really important talent pool, people that know your business, know your culture, and can be a really vital part of the workforce. So we recommend identifying recruitment before process starts, stop employee referral schemes, and create career returning programs as a really effective way of getting more women back into the workforce and into leadership positions. Thank you,
And
Ella.
that's just 3 of the pillars. So, Leanne said we've
Yeah.
got 5 pillars, so that we do have other. We talk about wellness and employee support, things like that. So if you are interested in any of those other things, please contact us, and we can help you with that and analyzing your data. And if anyone's got any questions, that is the end of the presentation. Shall I stop the share? Hang on. Stop the share, and we could maybe open it up if anyone's got any questions.
Let me see if any came in the chat. Well, now we can see all the names. That was a good
You can see all the
turnout,
names
Emma.
now.
Well
Hello,
done.
everyone. Hello, everyone. Hello. There's quite a few people. Good.
Yeah, nice. Nothing in the chat that I can see, but do feel free to put a question in the chat or pop your microphone on and let us know if there's anything we can clear up for you, anything you'd like to know.
Contact us afterwards if you'd rather one-to-one. You can contact with us on LinkedIn or through our website, and happy to have a chat.
Yeah, I'm just putting our email addresses.
Good idea. Thank you, Sam.
So thank you everyone at Lead 50/50. I thought that was really informative. And Tom, I think I agree with Ella in terms of how you describe and explain the data. It really makes it very simple for everyone, well, certainly for me to understand as well. So I
Yes.
really appreciate that. And some of the visuals there were really interesting. I know when we were referring to all energy, just for everyone, I know that predominantly the people in the audience are mainly energy focused. I say energy focused, are mainly oil and gas focused, because that's just where our pledge has been sitting. But energy, a wider one, includes electrics and nuclear. And I think we know that within those organizations, one, they're larger, and 2, they do have a little bit more women. So I think that's where there was that Access was kind of slightly behind on that one, but it was really interesting to see that comparison, and also to know that there are other technical functions that I guess are successfully keeping or having more even distribution of women within those organizations. But yeah, thanks everyone for the time today. Thanks for everyone who joined to listen to the pay gap report in this sweltering heat. I know that Leanne has dropped in both herself and Ella's email address in the chat. For anyone who hasn't already read the report, you can find it on our website, but we'll follow up with everyone with an email, and we'll also include Ella and Leanne's contact details in there in case there is anything that you would like to follow up with.
Thank you
Thanks,
very much,
Emma.
everyone.
No worries. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Have a nice
See you
day.
later. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Guys, have a great day.
Thank you.